So I said they were standing on some kind of old structure and cheering for the Patriot with their cries rocking the walls. So it is all about action, all about the mirth, exuberance of the public. Now the Patriot sees. It like gives us a reflection on what might be the case. Now the Patriot says, had he asked the public for anything, even the dearest things on which their sustenance depends, they would have readily given it to him. So that was his fame, that was his glory. Such great was his image. They would then ask him what else he wanted. We can see the exuberance of the people, as I mentioned, in the sight of the Patriot. The poet is trying to establish the kind of popularity that the speaker had through this stanza. So first two stanzas completed, one episode of the story of the Patriot is done. It talks about the popularity, the grandiose, the exuberance of the public, all of it. Now stanza 3, one of the most important stanzas of the poem. Alack, it was I who leaped at the sun, to give it my loving friends to keep. Naught man could do, have I left undone? And you see my harvest, what I reap, this very day. Now a year is run. Very well written stanza. The third stanza of the poem is the speaker's discourse on what all he did for his country. It begins with the poet giving a subtle reference, or it's an allusion, to the old Greek mythological tale of Icarus and Daedalus. Now Icarus, who was Icarus? Was the son of the great inventor Daedalus. And the story revolves around the escape of those two men from a high tower where they were held prisoner by making wings out of bird feathers and wax. So they were trying to go away from that tower. They're trying to make their escape. Icarus, taken aback with the ability of flight, flies too close to the sun. And what happened? Of course, got melted. His wax wings got melted, and his eventual fall, which kills him. Just like Icarus. Now Icarus is a fallen hero. So is our Patriot. The speaker admits, that he was overly ambitious and leapt at the sun, giving the sun his loving friends to keep, which might suggest that his action somehow caused the death of his close friends. Here again we can hypothesize that the Patriot is talking about some battle that claimed the lives of his dear ones. He did everything a man could have done to make things right. Despite this, he's facing his undeserved end. So he has done whatever could be done as a hero, as a patriot. But despite this, he was bound to face his undeserved end. He calls to attention the miserable state he is in. The terms, closely you see, the terms harvest and reap are closely seen as common metaphors for his own deeds or karma. Harvest and reap. And the poet uses this to convey that what he is facing is not, of course not, what he truly deserves. This line has to be pondered on. This is our cue. You see my harvest, what I reap. And the poet uses this to convey that what he is facing is not what he truly deserves. He says it has been a year since that day. Here the poet ends the speaker's flashback. It's done. Okay, is it clear? The third stanza was very important. And now we go on to the stanza number 4, where we know, of course, the present is talked about. There's nobody on the housetops now, just a balsam view at the window set. For the best of the cities all allow at the shambles get, or better yet, by the scaffold's very foot I trow. The speaker returns to the present and talks about what he sees. What he sees? He describes the present setting and in a way contrasts it with the one on the same day a year ago. Now he has been convicted and is being laid to the gallows to be put to death. This is his condition presently. As opposed to the setting in the first stanza, you have to compare and contrast very carefully. Now the place is all empty. Now there's nobody on the rooftops cheering for him. Only old men who cannot, of course, move, who are taken down by palsy, it's a disease, a paralytic state, and unable to cross the threshold of their houses, are watching the Patriot as he marches towards his death. The reason why no one is there to see the speaker. Why? Because people have gathered at the shambles gates. Now what is the shambles gate? It is the gate of the gallows to see the speaker die. So people are ruthless. It talks about the ruthless attitude of public. They've assembled to see him die. The people want to be where the action is. The speaker further makes the heart-touching comment that the best side, what is the heart-touching comment? Very, very important line, very, very sorrow-filled line. The best side is at the gate of the slaughterhouse, or at the very foot of the scaffold. Why? Because he's going to be hanged up there. Of course, I hope it is clear. If not, then we are going to conduct a doubt query class, of course. Okay? Now let us get into the stanza 5. I go in the rain and more than needs. A rope cuts my wrists behind. And I think by the feel of my forehead bleeds. For the fling, whoever has a mind, stones at me for my years' misdeeds. The 5th stanza is a continuation of the previous stanza, right? It's a present condition. And further describes the speaker's humiliation at the hands of the people. The poet starts with filling up the setting even more, makes it even more intenser. It is raining as the speaker is walking towards the scaffold. The rain is a symbolic element in poem. His hands are tied behind by the tight rope, and that is why he bleeds. And it cuts his wrists. He now arrives closer to the shambles gate, where all people have gathered. The Patriot is in his own mind, knowing what is he known about right at this moment, that suddenly death is ahead of him. As he is walking, he thinks he's bleeding from his forehead. It feels that he is bleeding. He's lost his vision, as if he cannot even see. He can only feel the trickling of blood. People throwing stones at him are causing injuries. So, what has replaced what? Roses with stones. Sharp contrast. Stones, roses. He says that the people who are throwing stones are the ones who have an active mind and are aware of his misdeeds. The speaker doesn't seem to be angry with these people for throwing stones at him. Why? Because it suggests that despite the treatment he's receiving, he doesn't blame the people. He knows that they have misunderstood him. So this is the acceptance thoroughly coming. Now there comes the stanza number 6, the final stanza of the poem. Thus I entered and thus I go. In trance people have dropped down dead, paid by the world. What dost thou owe? Me? God might question. Now instead, it's God shall repay. I am safer so. Beautiful and the most important philosophical stanza of this poem. The last stanza of the poem reflects on the Patriot's death. It is full of philosophical and religious ideas. Thus I entered and thus I go. His entry and exit from life. Position and people's mind in the presence of so many others sums up the speaker's life here. So he enters with glory, he goes with mistrust, misunderstanding, misconception. He says that in his triumphs, people have dropped him down dead. This suggests that he looks at his predicament as a triumph. He believes that he stood by the right things and thus considered himself victorious in defeat. So this is the optimism. He believes that he stood by the right things, thus considers himself victorious in defeat. The first 3 lines of the stanza deal with the ideas of the speaker. First 3. Thus I entered till what dost thou owe? Yet again we see Browning's stout religious belief. Browning is a very, very religious man. Believes that God might say, your sins were already washed away when you died. How? Because the sin that we have is in our body, not in our soul. Our soul is never sinned. The people sought to it. They punished you. God might say, they punished you. What now do you expect from me? You are now free of all corruption because you met with death. You are safe in my hands. Thus the Patriot thinks the punishment he got in the mortal world has purged him, cleansed him. Purged means cleansed him. And he hopes to go to heaven instead of hell. Why? Because he is cleansed of everything. He feels safer now, knowing that God knows he stood for what he thought was right, and thus he will be safer under his hands. So the poem ends in a complete optimistic note, because the patriot now feels safe at the hands of his father. So that is what the poem is all about. I hope it is clear to you people. The poem has been divided and it goes in a very, very smooth flow. It has its own lucidity, it has its own cadence, it has its own well-employed words, images, not very strict meter, and everything. The poem becomes a complete and whole. It talks about the theme of universality because we can relate with the rise and the downfall of the Patriot. So today's lesson comes to an end. Hope you read through the poem in between the lines very clearly. And of course we'll meet. Till then, stay safe and sanitize yourself. Thank you.